kind of chill out for an hour and just, have conversation instead of being busy, and, that's good.
So it was worth it, to say the least.
Very, very good.
And totally enjoyed ourselves. Awesome to watch my baby sister graduate college and go on to her master's program in criminal justice from U of I now. So she's doing all that stuff.
That's what happens.
Yeah. I got a bunch of cool stories that I'm going to be working on for the future.
Oh, yeah?
Longer pieces.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and YouTube stream's up now. That's good.
Yes, now.
So we're up. So you can watch us on YouTube. Just go to youtube.com and search for The Standard Byte, and you'll see that we're live now.
We are live now.
Facebook.com/StandardByte, Twitter.com/StandardByte. Tweet at us.
Everything.
We got everything.
We've got everything.
We usually lop the off, so if you can't find it with a the, take the off.
Take the off.
You heard it right.
Here we are inventing language again as we speak.
It's good. You guys can call us. Our question of the week is, what was it?
It's what do you think the financial climate is here in America right now?
Yeah, the current state of the economy. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, what do you think is going on with the economy? Is it great? Is it bad? What makes you think that?
Is it affecting you positively or negatively? If you give us a call at 260-424-8728. Doesn't matter if you're watching on YouTube, the live stream, if you're listening to us on 95.7, if you're listening to us on your TuneIn radio app, which you can do just by searching WELT and getting, listen to us there from 2 to 3, or anywhere across the planet, feel free to call us, area code 260-424-8728. And let us know what you think about the current state of the U.S. economy.
There you go.
It doesn't have to be complicated. You don't got to impress me or anything.
No, and it's just what do you personally think? How is it? How is your financial climate? I mean, what do you think of it?
Right.
How is your job? How are you?
Have you had a hard time finding work?
Yeah.
We talk about all kinds of stuff in the marketplace about job growth and. Oh, we added 160,000 new jobs in April or whatnot. And sometimes it doesn't feel like that on the local level.
It really doesn't.
Because you got hundreds of millions of people living in this country. And
a lot of
160,000 jobs?
Yeah.
That doesn't spread out very evenly,
Not at all.
So, give us a call. 260-424-8728. Real quick, you're listening once again to WELT 95.7. Comes to you from the main library downtown and via the tower at IPFW. We are generously funded by ESCO Communications as well as the Friends of the Library, who encourage all Allen County residents to come to any branch library and read a book.
During normal business hours.
She couldn't do it.
I can't even.
During normal business hours.
I can't. I tried that last week too, and I laughed it out. I couldn't even get it all the way.
Thank you. Come again.
Yes, exactly.
I got a bunch of stories
that's
picked
awesome.
out. I don't really have any Sunday spotlights. There is a report from AAF, I believe. I can't remember what the acronym stands for, about the current state of the U.S. economy and what banning all immigrants, what deporting all currently illegal immigrants would do to the U.S. economy. So that report is there, and is part of another story that I'm going to be talking about here in a little bit.
There you go.
But I think with all the promos aside, YouTube. By the way, subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Yes.
That's the Standard Byte. Get it. That way you know when we're live. You'll get the notifications and all that stuff. And you'll never miss a show that way. Same thing for the Facebook. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. So I said the promo was all out of the way, but it's not.
Well, we were trying, and there's actually a lot to cram into there. So
there is.
We've
only got an hour show, so I want to jam it all into the first 5 minutes.
If we can.
But phone line is open, and you can call us at any time to talk about that.
And answer our question of the week.
I will drop my story in a heartbeat. Eventually, I'm gonna get some promos and tunes and theme songs and stuff to.
Oh yeah, our little bed music.
Something would be nice.
Yeah.
But I just don't have time for it right now.
Yeah. There's too much going on.
So our topic today is the economy, if you didn't notice by the question of the week. I pulled a bunch of articles, and I personally am a truck driver. And it's a rather hard job. It's not as hard as some, but the inherent dangers with moving 80,000 pounds around at 65 to 70 miles an hour
That's
in a vehicle that's 80 feet long is the potential energy there is great. Yeah. Let's hopefully not turn it into kinetic energy.
How about not?
Yeah. So I found a story, as one does, from somewhere. I can't recall where, but I'll try to credit it later. It is called "The Trucker, His Downfall, and the U.S. Economy." Yeah, it's an interesting one. Let's see if it says here, go to source. Now I'll find it later. According to a new graphic by NPR, truck driver, that phrase, is the most common occupation in most U.S. states.
Really?
Yeah, there's a lot of us out there.
Oh, yeah.
Although truck driving isn't what it used to be. It's on the decline.
Yeah.
And also, the money we used to make being truck drivers is on the decline as well. In 1980, truckers made the equivalent of $110,000 annually.
Wow.
Yeah, not bad.
Not bad at all.
Today, the average trucker makes $40,000.
Good Lord.
Still not bad. As a starting job, it was not a horrible decision without any college experience of my own.
Oh, yeah.
So I needed to do it. I needed to start making money, and I needed to get into a job that would allow me to do so.
Yep.
And it does require specialized training. I just renewed my CDL from Indiana yesterday. So what happened to this omnipresent American occupation? At The Atlantic, that's the magazine, sociologist Steve Vicelli describes his research on truckers. He took an entry-level long-haul trucking job, interviewed workers, and studied its history. He found that the industry had essentially eviscerated worker pay, largely by turning truckers into independent contractors, misleading them about their benefits of this arrangement, and locking them into punitive contracts.
Ooh.
Very true.
Ooh.
The OO designation, as we call it, the owner-operator, is a very hard position in trucking to make money in anymore. It's not like it used to be. You buy your own truck, you pick the freight you want to haul, and you haul it. That sounds great, but there's so many contracts involved, so many middlemen involved. You typically, if you can't afford to buy a truck outright, especially with the current emissions regulations, you typically lease the truck from a company that already has trucks.
Yeah.
And then you basically are forced to work for them till you pay off the entirety of the lease.
Ugh.
Oh, yeah.
Ugh.
So Vicelli argues that few truckers are fully informed as to what it means to be an independent contractor. And I would tend to agree. Many of the people who are truck drivers or go into trucking are from low-income, low-education households that don't have any prospects to go into higher education due to finances or what have you, socioeconomic status.
There you go.
So they join on with companies like Swift and Werner and Schneider and stuff like that, where a majority of their truckers are lease drivers, and they don't really know what any of that means. At least at first they don't know. Trucking companies sell them on the idea that they'll be their own boss and set their own hours. But they don't emphasize that they will pay significantly more taxes, their own expenses, and the lease on the truck. That includes any mechanical failures that happen. You've got to pay all that out of pocket.
Well, that's the whole premise of, how do you make slavery more successful? Have the slaves pay for their own
How do you
housing
solve a problem like Maria?
Yep. No. That just makes me think of an old comic when I was a kid.
But yeah, they don't think about this stuff ahead of time. All the companies do is and these recruiting departments are great at it. They flash up a bunch of wicked numbers that make it sound awesome to do this.
Yeah.
And you could make potentially blah blah blah, like
potentially
an asinine amount of money, and it never really happens that way.
Of course not.
No. They don't emphasize that they'll have to, like I said, the lease on the truck. Vicelli interviewed one man who took home the equivalent of 50 cents an hour one week.
Wow.
Another week he'd ended up owing the company $100.
What?
As independent contractors, he writes, truckers, quote, end up working harder and earning far less than they would otherwise. Now, that is why I've advocated since I got into trucking, being a company driver, which means you're hired by that company to operate their equipment. You don't have to pay for the fuel. You don't have to pay for the repairs. You don't have to pay for the freight charges. You don't have to pay, in most cases, for lumpers. I don't know if you know what lumpers are. Like if you go to a massive distribution center, say for Walmart, Walgreens, Jewel Osco, somewhere like those big places. Well, the docks are all kind of unionized, and the dock workers are unionized, and under the Teamsters Union in most cases. And individually, each one of those guys is their own boss on the dock out there. So you go to dock your truck up to the building. You walk into the distribution center. There's a bunch of dudes sitting around picnic tables.
Oh, okay.
Eating lunches, waiting. Those are your lumpers. You go, I've got $100. Who'll unload this trailer for $100?
Really?
Yep.
That's really weird.
Yep. Some companies provide you with T-checks or kind of like cashier's checks type thing for lumper fees, and then you pay them that. Give them the check, write them the check, and then the company pays them later for the job. But yeah, you in a lot of big places you pay your own lumpers to hump the freight out of the trailer, unload it. Yeah. So that ends up being that way. If truckers want to get out of these contracts, the companies can hold their lease over their heads. Truckers sign a years-long contract to lease their truck, along with a promise not to work for anyone else. If the contract is violated, the worker is on the hook for the entire lease. This could be tens of thousands of dollars, so the trucker can't afford to quit. The one upside to what people tend to say about, or these companies tend to say, is, oh, we'll pay for your fuel. Fuel is probably the most expensive part of the whole thing.
Yeah.
They end up paying the fuel surcharge up to 100%, and that word surcharge is rather important.
Yeah.
Because it's not entirely the cost of the fuel.
Of course not.
The company pays the difference between what you pay for fuel and what they would have paid for fuel under a fleet contract with these fuel companies like Pilot Flying J, Love's, TA and Pilot, or TA and Petro. They all have fleet discounts.
Oh.
So if you have X number of trucks, you sign up to their fleet program and you get a discount. Well, that is what's known as a surcharge. So the difference between what you would pay as a single truck owner and what the fleet would pay is roughly almost $1 less in per gallon.
Wow.
Yeah. So the company pays that difference. They don't actually pay for the fuel. They pay for the difference between what you would pay and what they would pay. That's the fuel surcharge.
That's ridiculous.
Very misleading.
That is ridiculous.
Yep.
Oh my god.
Yep, but it sounds super cool. You just got the word, we pay 100% of fuel surcharge.
Yeah, you just got that little tiny there. This is called fine print.
Yep. This could mean tens of thousands of dollars for the lease. He's no longer working, in other words, to make money. He's just working, sometimes for years, to avoid debt. That's the extent of it. Yeah. It's a horrible indentured servitude type situation out there. You got to be really careful if you're a truck driver. The decimation of this once strongly middle-class job is just one story among many. Add them all up, all of those occupations that no longer provide a middle-class income and the rise of lower-paying jobs, and you get the shrinking of the middle class.
Yeah.
Since 1970, fewer and fewer Americans qualify as middle income, defined as a household income that is between 2/3 of and double the median, or middle household income. So that's they don't qualify as middle income.
Wow.
Yeah. You see it shrink in this graphic by Deseret News using data from the Pew Research Center. And right? But yeah, there's this graph there. I'll post this up on the Facebook page so you can see these graphics I'm talking about. But you can see just this. Now, it's great that her waistline of the middle class is losing weight, but the hip to waist ratio is off. And it should be the other way around. Economically. Yeah. So you think in 1971, the lowest income, the percentage of lowest income earners was about 16%. Lower middle class was 9%. The middle class in 1971 was 61%. Upper middle 10%, and highest income, highest bracket was 4%. Awesome. 2015, the the lowest class has jumped from 16 to 20%.
That's
Lower middle class has maintained steady from 71 at 9% all the way through 2015.
Wow.
Which is basically where the majority of us sit.
Mm-hmm.
Lower middle class.
Mm-hmm.
Middle class has dropped from 61% to 50% in 2015, between 71 and 15. Upper middle class has held steady at 12% for a majority of those years, and the highest bracket has gone from 4% to 9%. So you see a swelling increase in the lowest income earners. Another swell in the highest income bracket. Well, that money's got to come from somewhere, and it's not coming from lower middle or upper middle. It's coming square out of this midsection of the middle class.
Yeah.
By 11% since 71.
Yeah.
And that's probably rather conservative. So, figures may not add up to 100% due to rounding. Okay. But that's from Pew Research Center, and I trust Pew.
Yeah, I've actually got a Pew Research Center article up here right now.
Pew.
Yeah. Laser beams.
Yeah.
Anyway, America's shrinking middle class. A close look at changes within the metropolitan areas. Now, these are a lot of visuals, but I'm going to run with this. It says the U.S. middle class is shrinking in most U.S. metropolitan areas, and lower and upper income tiers are gaining share. Let's see. It says the American middle class is losing ground in metropolitan areas across the country, affecting communities from Boston to Seattle, from Dallas to Milwaukee. From 2000 to 2014, the share of adults living in middle-class income households fell in 203 of the 229 U.S. metropolitan areas examined in a new Pew Research Center analysis of government data. The decrease in the middle-class share was often substantial, measuring 6 percentage points more in 53 of the metropolitan areas, compared with a 4-point drop nationally. The shrinking of the middle class at the national level, to the point that it may no longer be the economic majority in the U.S., was documented in earlier analysis by the Pew Research Center. Let's see, this report encompasses 229 of the 381 metropolitan statistical areas as defined by the federal government. Let's see. That is the maximum number of areas that could be identified in the Consensus Bureau data for the analysis, for which the data are available for both 2000 and 2014. Accompanying text box provides more detail. Together, these areas accounted for 76% of the nation's population in 2014. This is unreal.
Well, I mean, part of the reason why we're seeing that shrink is we've transitioned to an industrial economy, or from an industrial economy to one that offers jobs primarily in the service industry.
Yeah.
We don't make stuff anymore.
No, we don't.
And, that's the low-paying service industry and the high-paying knowledge/information type industry. That's where all your high-paying jobs are at.
Yeah.
There's none of these middle, the trucking was like the last thing. And
even there you could make a good middle class income.
And even I make more than that 40,000 estimate.
That's good.
But it's not what I should have been making. And granted, there are new laws that help protect drivers, and it's a very complicated issue. But what it comes down to is company greed, corporate greed. So I mean, you've got other parts. Is restructuring of work to increasingly benefit the owners and operators and investors over the workers. It's another big thing you see in that article you were talking about.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you continue with that, but I've got graphics here illustrating the disconnect between the productivity and a typical worker's compensation between 1948 and 2014.
Oh wow.
Yeah. It's frightening. I'll give you the statistics in a little bit.
Yeah, by all means. Oh, let's see. In Goldsboro, an old railroad junction town.
That's North Carolina, right?
Let's see. I don't know, actually.
NC?
It says in Goldsboro. An old railroad junction town.
North Carolina.
An old railroad junction town and home to Seymour Johnson Air Force Base. The share of adults who lived in middle income fell from 60% in 2000 to 48% in 2014, or by 12 percentage points. This was one of the greatest decreases among the 229 areas surveyed. It is also an unambiguous signal of economic loss, as the share of adults in lower income households in Goldsboro increased sharply from 27% in 2000 to 41% in 2014. That's just staggering. That is just staggering.
That just gave me chills.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is unreal.
Poor North Carolina.
Yeah. Among American adults overall, including those from outside the 229 areas examined in depth, the share of the middle-class income households fell from 55% in 2000 to 51% in 2014, reflecting the accumulation of changes at the metropolitan level. The nationwide share of adults in lower-income households increased from 28% to 29%, and the share in upper-income households rose from 17% to 20% during the same period.
Wow.
That's just strange to me, because here's this, the wealthiest people on the rise, while the middle class,
raking it in.
But it's also being raked away from the lower middle class, where instead of being simply lower middle class, you're lower class income.
Oh yeah,
like straight up.
Oh yeah. And I mentioned in that kind of that thing that the percentages weren't entirely 100% because of rounding.
Yeah.
So you see these minuscule percentage points shift over the years. Well, that when you translate that to the millions of people in this country who occupy those brackets of income, it's staggering. It has a massive effect on people, and they don't recover from it. You don't recover from that stuff. No.
That's just this is getting almost chilling.
But when I was talking about that disconnect between productivity and wages, and we talk about that. Bernie Sanders talks about that a lot on his stuff. As the middle class has been shrinking, the productivity of American workers has been climbing. But the workers haven't been the beneficiaries of their own work. Instead, employers have just been taking a larger and larger share of the value added that workers produce. Basically, here's an easy example. If the banks crash, executives don't get punished, the economy goes almost bankrupt, and those executives still get their next quarterly bonus. Yeah.
There was a really interesting, a Jon Stewart thing where he had this finance moment where he put on one of the bookie visor and decided that I'll have to look it up on YouTube and show it to you because it was hysterically funny, the way as Jon Stewart often is.
Yeah.
But it was about how the banks get bailout money from the federal government, which is just obscene. The federal government is already so swollen it shouldn't have any problem. But here's if they're getting.
There were specific reasons for that at the time.
Well,
I mean, your FDIC, your FDIC and the was there to protect consumers and savers that put their money in banks, so that just in case something happened with the bank's capital, which was supposed to equal, if not exceed, the amount of saved assets that they are coordinating. If something happened to their own capital, which was the offset, then the federal government would step in and insure your accounts up to $100,000. Well, with the repeal of Glass-Steagall and Clinton's deregulation of Wall Street, we took away those protections. So now but we didn't add any stipulations to what they could do. So the regulation or the promise of reimbursement stayed the same. But the requirement for being reimbursed got taken away.
Of course.
Yeah. And so what they did was they took lenders' money, or whatever you want to call it. What are we called? Savers' money or investor money, whatever word. I always struggle with this term for some reason. I keep messing it up in my head, and I can never remember it when I need to remember it. What we're called to the banks.
Okay.
But they take our money. They then invest that into high-risk things while not sacrificing their own capital. And then, because they know, even if it fails, the federal government's going to bail it out.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. See,
they're completely removed from the situation. And the federal government hasn't kept up with the regulation. And the IRS has been gutted by repeated Republican moves to gut the not the power, but the amount. Dead air. The amount with which they can pursue these issues. They've taken away the power of the IRS to keep these companies in check, both taxationally and honestly. I should have thought about this ahead of time, so I wouldn't be struggling on the fly.
Taxationally.
Yeah, that's not a word, but they gotta. The regulatory power of the IRS has been gutted, which means they can no longer hold these people accountable for the nasty things they do, and
which is odd.
Which is then why people go, well, why does the IRS even have to exist? They can't do anything. Well, they used to be able to do something until they got sabotaged for corporate interests, so that corporations bought politicians, so that politicians would gut the IRS and other regulatory agencies so that they could be deregulated, yet still be fed government money. It's corporate welfare, not citizen welfare, that we should be concerned about.
That's what and I'm completely there.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Is this infuriating or what?
What I would like to do is reinstate the IRS with the powers it originally had,
and fewer on American citizens. I don't think they need to be
a prime example, the corporate bankruptcy bill that Hillary Clinton flip-flopped on when her husband was president. Elizabeth Warren met with Hillary and said, hey, can you persuade him this is going to pass the House and the Senate? This makes it easier for corporations to file for bankruptcy and a lot harder for individuals to file for bankruptcy. You and I. Can you persuade your husband to veto this when it comes across his desk? She said, yeah, I'll give it a shot. Passed by the House, passed by the Senate, vetoed by the president. In her memoir and in his writings, they attribute that veto to her.
Oh, good.
And her persuasiveness as spouse and first lady to the president. Well done. It was a consumer protection issue. It needed to happen. She runs for Senate. She gets massive donations from Wall Street and the banks and Goldman Sachs. And she was a Barry Goldwater girl starting out on this whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
She gets into the Senate. The bankruptcy bill comes before the Senate again. She votes in favor of the bankruptcy bill. She completely flip-flopped on the issue due to campaign contributions by the financial sector and Wall Street. Corporations now have an easier time filing for bankruptcy. Individuals have a harder time, which is where you leave Donald Trump, who has never personally gone bankrupt because he's shoveled all of his personal debt into the companies that he owns and then has them file bankruptcy. So 5 companies that he's run have filed for bankruptcy.
Wow.
And I got some stuff on Donald Trump later on.
Oh, dear God.
Yeah, so, and I don't usually quote or even give any credence to conservative websites. I have one that really spoke to me.
What's that?
It was an anti-Donald Trump deal. So we'll get to that in a little bit here.
Steven Crowder is pretty much there, but...
Right, I don't know who it was, but I'll have the info on here. But I wanted to talk about the disparity between productivity and wages, give you some estimate of what's going on. So from 1948 to 1973, here's your percentages. Productivity was at 96.7%. Hourly compensation was very close to that at 91.3%.
There you go.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that makes sense.
1973 to 2014, productivity of 72.2%. Hourly compensation, 9.2%.
Just get out of here.
That's the rate. That's the increase in those time periods is what that's what those percentages are. So from 48 to 73, productivity increased by 96.7%, and compensation likewise 91.3. Increase from 73 to 2014, productivity kept rising, rose by 72.2%. Hourly compensation has only risen in that time period 9.2%.
Yeah.
And when you see the graph, it's outrageous.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. Cumulative percent change since 1948. Hourly compensation is at 109% since 1948. Productivity has increased 238.7% from 1948. That's cumulative percent change since 1948. Yeah. This is why so many Americans are struggling to stay afloat today. I mean, we've designed an economy that makes it even more difficult to land in the middle class. Trucking isn't the job it used to be. That is because we aren't the country we used to be.
It's true. It is true.
So that's a big piece, and I was very glad to see it, and it really piqued my interest on Flipboard of all places.
On Flipboard, that is. Wow.
Yeah, but I've got plenty of Trump stuff. I've also got some interesting articles here, a big graphic that shows how the Civil War created the modern economy in the United States.
I was actually just having this conversation a little bit ago about, the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, and how that actually set up, the way things ended up being.
The way our military spending lays out currently is a direct representation. I've also got 11 signs that the U.S. economy is rapidly deteriorating.
Mm-hmm. That sounds like Michael Snyder.
Deteriorating? I don't know who it is. It might be.
That sounds like Michael Snyder. It might be.
The feds say that the energy sector carbon emissions have dipped in 2015, which is good. Consumer in Focus, your complete preview of the week's big economic events from Reuters. Got that. Yeah, and then I've got Donald Trump's plan to destroy the U.S. economy.
There you go.
Accurate. And then a report says that Trump's immigration plan would sap billions from the U.S. economy. So those are upcoming here in the next half an hour. Remember, you can, the second half of the show, remember, you can call us 260-424-8728. Let us know what you think about the American economy.
There you go.
Has it treated you kindly? Has it, gotten you up in the behind?
Yep.
Or...
There was a visual to that only the people on YouTube were privy to, and me here in the studio. That was, and if it hadn't been for the phrase,
one knuckle out.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that's horrendous, and I love it.
No gloves. Yeah, give us a call, 260-424-8728 to discuss the economy with us.
Yeah,
that ought to be a fun one.
That should be. And
we'll keep them quick because I know people can ramble on about the economy. We've only got the last half of the show here. So if you've got some comments, let us know how the economy's worked for you. We'll be glad to have it on here.
That would be great.
Yep. So you got anything else up here?
Let's see.
I can
Economically,
do that Civil War graphic too.
Please do, because I actually had a couple of articles lined up and I seem to have lost track of them, which is silly because I thought I saved them to Evernote, which was a great idea. I'm slacking here. It was actually a really busy day today, so. But yeah, as far as the way I think the economy is, I think it's great, and this was a really interesting interview that I saw on. I don't know.
Well, I'll give you 11 reasons why it's not great in a second.
No, it's not. But hang on.
It is, but it's not.
No, it is for certain demographics. There was actually a Wall Street employee. There was a Wall Street employee that spoke it on national television, and he just spelled it out and like not even shy about it. It was really kind of striking. And the journalist interviewing him said, "Jaws in this studio have collectively dropped to hear you say this," because what he was saying on the air was. I actually go to bed dreaming of another collapse. I actually go to bed dreaming.
So they can short everything else out and make a butt ton of money. And
he really did. He actually, line by line, described exactly how it works. And he said, no, this has been great. This recession has been awesome for Wall Street, which just boggles my mind because it seems to me...
Well, he's saying what all of us already knew. But the talking heads on television seem to be in their own little bubble. They don't understand how regular people work. Yeah.
And it's, once again, how these people are so insulated from the way reality actually happens versus what they are paid to say in front of a camera. And that's one of my biggest problems, I think, with journalism is that it has lost any journalistic qualities.
Integrity?
About that.
Well, independent media, I've got to give big props to independent media, especially the likes of, say, TYT, the Young Turks on YouTube, or the Majority Report, or... the Jimmy Dore Show, all these places, especially on YouTube.
On YouTube,
are doing some great
Rebel Media.
Media, it's not my cup of tea, but I enjoy some of their less politically charged, Trump positive pieces, what other countries think about the U.S.
Yeah.
Well, they were all Canadians that live in the U.S. now, as far as I'm aware.
There are a bunch of them. Ezra Levant still lives in Canada. Lauren Southern still lives in Canada. They're all still based out of Canada, and it's Lauren Southern is really interesting because she's this political student at a university, and she's gotten heavily active in all of this Western world kind of politics thing. She actually was, she's been, I guess, boots on the ground for a lot of this stuff, and Ezra Levant has traveled around into European countries to see exactly what it's like on the ground there.
Sure, I mean, but there's still a confirmation bias. So what you want to look for and what you want to see is what you're going to find.
Absolutely.
So we do have to take that with a grain of salt. So I would encourage everybody to watch Rebel Media and watch groups like TYT. And play all the info.
Oh yeah.
So you get the whole story.
Definitely.
That's what I try to do.
Syrian Girl is another one that I watch. She's a video blogger based out of Damascus, and she's got some really interesting information as to how things are actually going in Syria versus what we're told here by Western media, which is just a fascinating contrast.
And a lot of that stuff is going to be anecdotal, but you can't completely write off anecdotal evidence. You know what I mean?
Indeed.
Especially in real-time situations, anecdotal evidence is kind of what you need. Because they're the individual there seeing it happen right then.
She's right there.
So, yes, by definition, that is anecdotal, but it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Speaking of anecdotal and information, I've actually found there to be much more honesty in journalism on Saturday Night Live. They apparently had a
Satire and comedy tends to be the most truthful.
It really is, and it's
truthful form of entertainment.
It has spelled out a lot, and it's apparently there's this recent clip of a mock interview with Hillary Clinton, and it was apparently side-splitting. And
I've got to watch that because some of the Hillary Clinton stuff that's on there is just hilarious.
Yes, it is.
Since this campaign started.
This is so funny. I mean, they did a parody of the debates. They did a parody. Like, Bernie Sanders was on there, and he's like, no, give me your vacuum pennies. They're the coins of the middle class. I don't want those shiny, fancy ones.
Yeah, don't break a new roll open for me.
Don't poo-poo the vacuum penny.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it was so funny. That one's good, and this next one that I'm probably going to look up, and I'm probably going to put on the Facebook page because it's hysterically funny. And I'm just gonna keep with satire there because that's more honest than the big bucks.
Yeah,
MSNBC.
Seems to be because they're all run by conservative media heads. I mean, that's what it is. You're owned by massive corporations that have no morals.
That's
the only moral they have is to make more money.
You know, I actually have a chime in from a listener here referring to the alternative media that we were just mentioning. Quote, that's called gonzo journalism, folks. Which is really interesting because there's a Ralph Steadman poster here in the studio.
I can kind of agree with that, yeah.
There is a Ralph Steadman poster exactly here in the studio, which is kind of awesome.
Yeah, that's a new one, big one, right there in front.
Yep. Yeah, where the buffalo roam.
Yeah. And Peter Boyle, Bill Murray.
Yep. And that would be
music by Neil Young.
Yeah. And I've only seen clips of it when what was it? That was when Hunter S. Thompson was still alive.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
he was. What a strange person.
Oh yeah.
What a
lot of time in Morocco.
Yeah. And Colorado.
Got totally screwed up.
He was actually fairly famous for being off of his rocker when he was sitting there and writing.
One of Anthony Bourdain's biggest mind influences. The chef. Are you familiar with Anthony Bourdain? No? You should check out, he's had 2 different shows on television as well as wrote a massively popular book about being a chef in a kitchen. It was called Kitchen Confidential, and that came out years ago. And that made him rich and famous. And then he had a show on the Travel Channel for I think like 10 or 12 seasons. They're like maybe 10 seasons at the most. It was called Anthony Bourdain No Reservations, and he would literally travel the world and learn about cultures and countries through their food. And he smoked cigarettes and was very punk rock. I mean, the Ramones were his guys, and he's that kind of. And then when that show finished, he went over to CNN, not as a correspondent, but to have his own show on the network.
That's interesting.
It's called Anthony Bourdain Parts Unknown, and it's the same type of show. So he kind of continued doing the same format. He went to Libya, he went to Colombia, Peru, Morocco, Myanmar, which used to be Burma, and all kinds of places. And I'm watching it now on Netflix.
Cool.
But yeah, check that out. You'd love the guy, man. He's
probably
great.
Would.
Super awesome.
I probably would.
He's in the episode I'm watching right now is in Israel. So
wow. Yeah. That would be a trip.
Tasting local food, street meat, all kinds of stuff, and learning about the people. There. So wild stuff. Why don't I? Oh, but thanks to the chimer inner there.
About the gonzo journalism.
Yeah, I'm not checking the YouTube right now. I don't know if there's been any comments on the YouTube live stream.
Let's have a look.
I don't have it up on mine because my computer's a little bogged down right now.
Let's see. It says 2 watching right now.
Well, that's good. It's
that is good.
But the comments would be up there in that big white blank spot.
Nope.
No worries. If you want to comment along with what you're listening to, feel free and do that. Why don't I move on to that Civil War bit?
There we go.
About how the Civil War created the modern U.S. economy. All right, this comes from a place that wrote a thing.
The the thing with the guy in the place.
But the big graphic that I'm going to be bullet pointing here
Mhm.
comes from Norwich University the Master of Military History online program. So this graphic shows how the Civil War created money. The Civil War was a pivotal moment in the history of the United States. The war was responsible for more American deaths than any other conflict, and it has played a continuous role in both the culture and economy of the U.S. ever since. During the course of the Civil War, the U.S. national debt ballooned to 40 times its previous size. The cost of the war ushered in several new rounds of taxes to fund the war effort, changes that are still in full effect today.
Yeah.
Following graphic from Norwich University's online Masters in Military History program shows how the effects of the Civil War are still with the U.S. today, and how the war permanently changed the face of the U.S. economy and federal spending.
Ooh.
What were you gonna say?
No, I'm
Oh, okay.
watching you.
You
and
pointed
listening.
at me, and it was
I pointed
scary.
at you.
Yeah. Okay, so I've got this graphic pulled up, and I'm going to try to hit the points here. I'll have this up on the Facebook page later today as well, so that you guys can kind of see this graphic along with people. Okay, so the pre-Civil War budget and debt. This is this section. In 1789, when George Washington was in office, the national debt was $77 million and was decreased to $64.8 million by 1860, the year before the war started. So the budget before the war started in 1860, $78 million, that was the federal budget, was $78 million. So we had a surplus at this point.
Yeah.
The federal budget was such, and the debt was less. That defines the surplus. The defense budget was $29 million. That's 37% of the federal budget.
Wow.
That was in 1860, before the Civil War started. We were still kind of coming down off of the less than 100 years ago, less than 100 years previously.
Wow.
The War of Independence. So we still had those issues, and then you had the Mexican-American War and all this other stuff that had to be.
The French Banana War.
Yeah, literally. So then we had an increase in federal spending. Federal spending increased each year during the Civil War. In 1865, the budget was $1.3 billion. That's the federal budget.
Good Lord.
That's in 5 years. That's including $1.17 billion for defense. Think about that. The total budget, $1.31 billion.
Wow.
Defense spending, $1.17 billion.
Get out of here.
In 1865. Yeah. That's during each year from 1862 to 65, the government spent around 90% of its budget on defense. So what happens when you're fighting a civil war?
Well, you know.
Yep. 1861. Let's see what this chart is. Federal budget versus defense budget. Kind of, yeah, you can see the graphic there. I'll show this to you, Leah.
Wow.
There's the graph, yeah.
This is absolutely staggering.
Mm-hmm.
And this is in the 1800s. This is not
Right.
today's numbers.
And you can follow that up and pull that along follow that up. Pull that up and follow along if
There
you
we
wanted
go.
to. It's on that program there.
Mm-hmm.
For you. Sorry, listeners, you can't. Right now.
Not until it's on.
But then the rise of the national debt follows. As the Civil War was fought, tax receipts could not keep up with the spending. And this national debt increased dramatically each year. In 1865, the federal budget showed a $963 million deficit with an accumulated debt of $2.68 billion, up from $64.8 million in 1860. In 5 years. Ballooned to 40%.
That's just unreal.
And you can see the disparity in that bar chart there.
Holy wow.
Oh, that's what happens when a country attempts to pull itself apart.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
And the good guys have to go slap down the bad guys.
You know. Wow.
Yes, I know it's a little inflammatory, that comment, but
Well, you know.
income tax was established for the debt burden. It's a bullet point there. So what we know is our federal income tax. The Union, President Lincoln established the nation's first income tax, imposed a 3% income tax on income from $600 to $10,000, a 5% income tax on all higher incomes.
Wow.
So the first kind of bracket system here in the U.S. The Confederacy, that was in 1862. Confederacy in 1863 followed up by passing its first income tax, which was a graduated income tax, exempted wages up to $1,000, a levied 1% tax on the first 1,500 over the exemption, and then 2% on a 2% tax on all other income.
Wow.
It's kind of a graduated, what they call, graduated income tax.
Mm-hmm.
And so then the Union comes back in 1864. Remember, this war lasted 5 years.
Yeah.
So not very much. You got 62, 63, and 64. The Union comes back. The income tax rose to 5% for income $600 to $5,000. 7.5% tax for income ranges of $5,001 to $10,000, and a 10% income tax on all higher incomes. This is where you start to get the feel for the modern income tax system coming up here. And then we had additional war financing too. 2 significant laws were passed during the war to aid financing. In addition to the income tax, the government passed the Legal Tender Act of 1862 and the National Bank Act of 63. So the Legal Tender Act of 62, on this day the U.S. Treasury issued $150 million in currency notes not backed by gold, known for the first time as greenbacks. That's where we get that from. By the end of the war, the government printed between $250 to $450 million in greenbacks. The printing of money accounted for 18% of all government revenue.
Wow.
So they made money off of printing that. For the National Bank Act of 63, this act made a nationwide banking system that loaned the government money and established a standardized currency system that continues today. Government issued $500 million in war bonds. It was passed with little review or debate.
Yeah.
The bill had flaws and was incomplete, prompting the first comptroller, Hugh McCullough of Indiana, to change and clarify many of its provisions, expanding and redrafting a new version signed in June of 64.
Wow.
March 3rd of 65, Congress passed a 10% tax on notes from state banks, not federal. So, yeah. But the U.S. saw an immediate effect from these financing laws.
Yeah.
As revenue started to increase dramatically the year after they were passed. So you had total government revenue in 1860 was $65 million. In 65, well, let's see where the big jump is. 62 down to $60 million for government revenue. 63, it doubled to $124 million. 64, it doubled again to $277 million. Almost double. 65, $348 million. And by 1866, the government revenue was $572 million. So immediate change in the financing laws of this country. We saw a bunch of stuff.
Well, yeah.
So yeah, we get a lot of things these days from the reason for such high budgets and all kinds of stuff. So I'll leave off the last 2 so you can go to the Facebook page and check that out. Yeah, very interesting graphic, very easy to understand. I really enjoyed it. Let's see. Anything else I want to say from it? No, I'm good. Yep. So yeah, that's how the Civil War created the modern U.S. economy with its laws and need for financing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
pretty crazy.
It is interesting, and that's a history lesson I've not actually received before, and I've sincerely never been curious about it, because to me it was simply crap from the word go, is the way the tax system works.
Right.
Now, on the other hand, understanding that as a civilized place and needing to pay civic servants and so on, that's great. But I'm all for it. There can certainly be some trimming down at the federal level, at the state level, at the local level.
Especially in the military budget.
There can be trimming down. We don't need to be spending that much or even budgeting anywhere near that much to pay these stuffed shirts to stand around on camera and say, look, I'm philanthropic. Look at me. I'm going to cut this ribbon on this cool new building. And that's it.
We need to get the money out of politics, too.
Yes, it needs to be a volunteer position, and that will make the U.S. economy completely, will change the face of it forever.
There's still individuals and people who need to support families and stuff like that, so you can't just make it completely volunteer unless you make it
minimum wage,
volunteer and a part-time position. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Yeah, I can see that, but if you want to make it a full-time position like they claim it to be now, then you've got to compensate them somehow in order to live. I mean, otherwise you're going to have these homeless despots in the chambers, malnourished
That would be
and
fun.
unable to think more than they already are.
Well, it sounds eerily.
But I volunteered for this.
Yeah, exactly. And if it's that important to them, it should show.
Oh, sure.
I personally
and it would
think-
become more important to them if we got the money out.
Yep.
The financial sponsorships needs to stop. The legal bribery needs to stop.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And that's corruption 101. It's people
Absolutely.
going and waving big stacks of cash. Here you
It's
go.
people assuming that if they get millions of dollars in campaign finance contributions, that they're somehow not going to be swayed by that when it comes time to pass bills.
Yeah. Exactly.
Straight BS.
I think, what was it? I saw a meme or something. This was years ago now, actually, and it said simply, let's put everybody on Capitol Hill on minimum wage. Watch how fast things change.
Oh yeah, watch how fast the minimum wage skyrockets to $15 to $20 an hour.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Mhm.
And
But
it's-
unfortunately, the people who can put themselves on minimum wage are the ones who control whether or not they get put on minimum wage.
Yep.
It's a horrible catch-22. Those mother plumbers up there, man.
Very, very good catch there, Dave.
Those mothers plumbers. Yeah.
Mother's plumbers. I like it.
Yeah. I tell you. Oh well, I mean, but that's just part of it. I mean, Trump's already here to destroy the U.S. economy. This is that conservative site that I was talking about.
What is it called? This should be interesting.
I'm gonna find the source particularly for this one.
There are actually, a lot of conservatives and actually
Weekly
most,
Standard.
Weekly Standard. That sounds familiar.
WeeklyStandard.com.
Okay. Because a lot of conservatives, let's be serious, are not fans of Trump. A lot of them are not.
Depends
lot of-
on which part of what conservatives are you talking to?
I'm
Punditry
No, I'm talking
or the common conservative?
I'm talking about the common conservative.
Because I've met a
Ton.
flip ton that love Donald Trump.
That's interesting because
I know.
I've met a lot of them that are Ted Cruz or were all Ben Carson. My
Equally
previous
horrible.
job, I actually used to work around a bunch of sincerely conservative Republican people, minus one guy there, but they're all the guys there. Ben Carson all the way, yay!
Jesus.
No, I'm serious. And if you mentioned Donald Trump,
Put the narcoleptic in office. Yeah, sure.
yeah, he can barely
Jeez.
stay away. But that's what I've been noticing.
Look, do you just vote? You know what I mean?
Do you just vote?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But
It looks
yeah.
like we've got Eric walking into our studio. Hi.
Eric, what are you doing in here, man?
You put me
Welcome
on
to-
television.
Welcome
Yeah.
welcome to the show. In our last couple of minutes here, I want to thank you guys for tuning in, and
Oh, for
even
sure.
if you didn't call, we did get some input from
Yeah.
some listeners. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'll get the I'll get these articles up.
Mm-hmm.
But to finish it out, here's why you shouldn't vote Trump. If all you care about is the economy, then get Trump out of your mind. And that's who I'm speaking to today, because that's the theme of the show.
Mhm.
So the economy is the theme of the show. It's my show. Donald Trump has never, like I said, the Weekly Standard. Donald Trump, who has never, ever gone personally bankrupt, has a plan to attack our mounting national debt. Stiff creditors. Trump has lots of experience with this. Being a Trump creditor is only a slightly better position to be in than a degree holder from his failed university, or an affiliate in his multi-level vitamin marketing scheme. Aside from casting aside GOP competitors, Trump specializes in navigating the doldrums of bankruptcy, which is why it's a natural thought for him to think we can just write down our national debt. It's odd for the candidate who promises seriously to eliminate the $19 trillion national debt in 8 years without reforming entitlements, which I don't feel, through my calculations and research, needs to happen, because unless you're talking about corporate entitlements.
That's what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, they're not in this article. I can guarantee you they're not talking about that. But yeah, I'm going to say corporate entitlements without reforming corporate entitlements. To tell America's creditors, read mostly Americans, to accept less than they were promised. If it weren't a sad but true situation, that could be a more honest Trump campaign slogan. Accept less than promised. Trump. Make America hate again.
That's actually the name of a tour right now of Filter and Orgy. It's Make America Hate Again.
Is it?
I'm not
Oh,
even
man.
kidding. Yeah.
Seniors, is that a band name?
Which? Orgy? Filter?
They're both? Okay.
Filter is a band.
I gotcha.
Orgy is
Okay.
a band.
I
The
thought-
name of the tour
Uh-huh.
is Make America Hate Again.
By Filter and Orgy.
By Filter and Orgy. A
A
filtered
lot of
orgy.
fluids. back to seniors.
my God.
Seniors, of course, being savers, would bear the brunt of a Trump debt write-down. Such a thing could happen. But the real losers would be, well, everyone. Were Trump elected, ignoring market shocks that the likelihood of that would bring, signaling that the U.S. might hedge on repaying its sovereign debt in full, would be effectively a default on our debt. That's something that would make even Ted Cruz blush. And he wants everyone to die. One of the beautiful parts about the American financial system is its effort to distance politics from monetary policy. I highly disagree with that, but then again, the people who wrote these are financial bubblers.
Well, yeah.
So they are within their own bubble and think they can do no wrong. So take it with a grain of salt, folks. Money does influence politics all day long. So
and it shouldn't.
Yeah. The Federal Reserve is accountable to Congress, but only to a point, giving Congress or the president, Trump or not, complete control over the levers of our economy would be a disaster. So to read the rest of that, I'm going to put that up on the Facebook page. We got to get going. It's time to be done.
Yeah.
Anyways, we appreciate you listening. You're listening to 95.7 FM WELT. This has been the Standard Byte. I'm Dave.
I'm Leah.
We'll see you all next week.
Have a great week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Got it.
All
Pushed
right.
it by a couple, didn't I?
Yeah.
Almost.
Go ahead and hit stop.
I couldn't
Yep.
even find a place to park.
Really?
I had to park at Euros because of the game.
Oh.
So I hope I don't get towed.
Yeah, I know that.
All right. You going to clip this, or are we going to do it later? Because I got to...
I'm going to clip it later.
Okay.
So let's do, I want to,
Yeah, we
same
are.
project
Yeah.
as, to the dust.